Right now, you probably have a lot of trepidation from certain parts of your business around AI. Is it going to take my job? I'm afraid of this, or whatever it happens to be. And my advice is very much to help your people experiment, allow them some space and familiarity to kind of figure out, how is this going to change my life? How is this going to change my work? Instead of coming down from on high and saying, now go do this, you're coming and saying, hey, you have the freedom to run. Here, go out and do some experimentation. I'm not going to be prescriptive. You know your job better than I do. We're here to support you. We're here for you to test and try. We're going to give you as much yes as we can so that you can become the best team that you can be. And so for me, the summary is basically let your people do what they do best. They're creative, they're smart. If you give them the ability to do that, they're going to find the right ways to adopt technology. They're going to use it to make themselves more efficient and productive. They want it just as much as you do. So give them the freedom.
Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored, where tech leaders drop the filters and just tell it like it is. Make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode or the unfiltered insights that come with it. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, serial tech entrepreneur, Amazon bestselling author of the book Fail Hard, Win Big, and CEO of Sonatafy Technology, a software delivery partner providing U.S.-led execution supported by senior Latin America engineering. Today, I am joined by Jonathan LaCour, who's gone from being a software engineer turned CTO. He's been senior vice president of product and technology, and now is CTO at Mission, which is a AWS premier consulting partner. Jonathan, welcome, bud. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Really excited to chat. So kind of one of the most interesting times in software in a long time. So, definitely a good time for it.
It's definitely not boring. There's plenty going on, to say the least. All right. So if you would give our listeners a quick overview of Mission as a company, what you guys do, what you focus on.
Absolutely. So Mission has been around for about 8 years. We founded it as a combined managed services, professional services, and resale partner for AWS exclusively. Kind of acquired 3 businesses to make that happen, squished them all together, and it's been quite a fun ride. Over the years, we've done a lot of work both in the software space and in the infrastructure services space, and we've remained dedicated to AWS. I was the founding CTO at Mission, and we actually sold to CDW, which is a wonderful, big, publicly traded company not too long ago.
They're a Chicago-based company, I believe, correct?
They are Chicago-based. Yeah, I've had a lot more excuses to get out there now, which is awesome.
Well, you don't want to do it this time of year. That's where I'm from before I moved to Scottsdale, Arizona. And it's cold there right now. But yeah. I thought CDW was headquartered in the Chicagoland area. So that's great. So going through an acquisition as the founding CTO, how has that been? Are you keeping your head on straight? Is your head spinning all the way around?
CDW has a very interesting approach to how they do integrations, and they've really done quite a lot of hands-off, let's make sure we don't mess up a good thing, which I definitely appreciate. I think now we're finally getting into sort of the meat and potatoes of an integration where we're starting to share more things together, systems, and migrating some things, and so on and so forth. So, I've done acquisitions a bunch of times. As I mentioned, we did 3 all at once to start Mission, and I've seen them go well, and I've seen them go incredibly poorly. So I think, I've learned quite a bunch of good lessons about how to get it right. And that's definitely been the case more often than not at this point.
Well, my book, Fail Hard, Win Big, is my life entrepreneurial story that I've had 30 companies and 20 failed. 10 of those succeeded.
Nice.
Good, bad, or indifferent. You learn more from your failures.
Yeah, of course.
Than you do your successes. And in that time, I have acquired 11 companies, including my company, Sonatafy, was an acquisition that I did as well.
Nice.
It's a great way to build things together, to get some scale to them, to acquire expertise. But, you're juggling a lot of balls with that.
Yeah, it's no joke. I think people often, they go a little too slow. And that was definitely one of the things that I noticed earlier in my career, that if you go slow, you can run into problems. It's always better to rip off the Band-Aid and just run, right? Become one sooner than you possibly could in any world before. Now, it's a lot easier, right? We have less, physical infrastructure to worry about. Everything's in the cloud. It's pretty easy. You just attack it and go.
I like it. What current projects are you guys working on that you can talk about? What's some exciting stuff going on?
So always have a lot going on. So because Mission is a partner, we do a lot of work on behalf of our customers, right? And that means that we get to dabble in so many different areas. Right now, obviously, a hot area of that is AI, and we do quite a lot of Gen AI projects. We've done more successful deployments to production than probably any other partner in the ecosystem, which has really been exciting. I think as a person who was born in software, infrastructure has always been important. I've been big fan of AWS for a long time. But the things that excite me the most are things like serverless, for example, where you're actually, building, it's sort of like the application and the cloud become one and the same. And so AI sort of falls into that bucket where it's as much about software as it is about infrastructure. And so we're doing a lot there. In addition, I work on quite a lot of things on my own, sort of as as the senior technologist at the business, always staying sharp. I write more code than I should. They don't let me put in production, which is probably a good idea, but I'm constantly learning. And right now I'm doing quite a lot of work with agents. And so that's definitely kind of a top of mind thing for me.
Now, you have a web name out there. Is it Clever Devil?
Clever Devil. Yeah, it's funny.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I grew up in the age of the web, right? And I remember having, early blogs running things like Movable Type and then, WordPress and everything in between. And then over time, I, went on social media like everybody else and things kind of died out and then they came back. But not too long ago, I rekindled my kind of passion for the web and ended up getting, from way back in my time on IRC. So I'm like a real nerd, like a deep nerd. I used to have that as my sort of name because somebody said to me once, "You're one clever devil," right? And I was like, I'll take that. That's me. And so I even also work on my website. So I'm an odd person who has their own personal site, and I've had it for over 20 years, and that's cleverdevil.io. So like now I'm, it's kind of stuck. I have that name on Slack for work, and I'm not going to be able to carry that back over to CDW.
I like it. Jonathan, tell us about your software engineering team that you have. The work model you guys have. Are you working from home, remote, in office, hybrid, where they're located?
Yeah, great question. So we actually have a couple different teams that sort of fall in that bucket. So we have the teams that actually build things for customers, right, on the service delivery side. And then we have a team that works on sort of our core platform and applications. And that's called Mission Control, sort of my baby from the beginning.
Great name.
And
love the name.
It worked out like perfectly. I was like, of course, we have to use this name. And so on the service delivery side, we have people all over the world, right? And I think that's by design because we want to make sure we have people close to our customers. We want to be sure we have that sort of 24/7 coverage for sort of our managed services. And so, they're all over the place. And that's a very challenging thing to get right, but pretty proud of it. We've done a very good job of that. And I think sort of mimicking the way that open source projects work has been kind of a critical factor in that. And that's also true for our internal team that works on our own platform, the product development org. And those are mostly onshore, but they're spread all over the United States. And we've had really good luck basically interacting through things like Slack, regular Zoom sessions together, and quite a lot of collaboration via like GitHub or GitLab in our case. It's really worked out nicely. And I think it gives us the ability to kind of move more quickly by having more of an asynchronous approach to how we do our work.
Gotcha. So you in your world, and most of us have many clients or masters that we're serving, but you're leading the service delivery teams with implementations. You also have your internal core systems. And how much time do you get to focus on your core systems, which I love it. You called it mission control.
Yeah.
Versus, clients are always the priority. That's what keeps the revenue coming in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think the critical thing to think about there is that we have a bunch of leaders in the business that are all quite helpful and useful. As a startup CTO, I have worn so many hats, right? I think you could have given me 6 or 7 titles over that period of time. And there have been times when I was leading both the product development organization and service delivery. There's been times where it was one or the other. And right now, I'm really focused mostly on our internal platform. And the reason for that is because, like you said, customers come first, but Mission is unique because there's a lot of pro-serve businesses in the ecosystem that all do great work, but their whole business model is fly in, nameless faceless Navy SEALs, right? Execute and then out the door. And we're a partner, right? We want to be with our customers for a long time. We want to provide them with ongoing value. And that means that we have to have a platform that makes that possible, right? Find ways to glue together all of the things that we do together with our customers hand in hand. And so Mission Control is kind of a unique platform because it's designed for a services business to work with our customers on a sort of a collaborative fashion. And it's been a lot of fun. So software is my background. I've been a programmer forever. So being able to be engaged on that pretty heavily has been so much fun.
I like it. So what are some things that are slowing your product or engineering teams down right now? And what have you tried that's worked and not worked?
Yeah, good question. I think we all go through this. And to me, consistently in my career, and I'm seeing it now, is interrupts, right? And when you're an important team, when you build core systems, those core systems need proper care and feeding. When you're the experts on things like the AWS resale environment and how to manage accounts and payers and all that, you get a lot of interrupts. People coming in from the delivery side or from other parts of the business and saying, hey, I need this, and they need it now. They don't need it next week, they need it now. And in the meantime, your teams are sprinting and they're trying to manage their releases and, make sure they hit all the things they needed to do. And so for me, handling interrupts has been probably the most challenging thing. But as I said, that's been true in my career before. And one of the techniques that we have used at Mission is to bake some of that in. Understand that those interrupts are going to happen and allocate some time for them. And then you also have to be willing to say no. Oftentimes when people say they need something right away, you can have a conversation and say, hey, look, right, if you need it right away, we try to reserve capacity. But if you don't need it right away, really challenge yourself here because we're, going to have to rob from Peter to pay Paul, and we don't want to have to do that.
If you have sales guys out there doing the implementation, everything's as highest priority.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I will say, there will be times at the business where, we'll have something big go on. We actually had that happen earlier this year. We needed to do a big software, transition from one platform to another a little bit sooner than we had kind of planned and expected. And, it rips your team out of their focus a little bit, but you got to roll with the punches, do what's right for the business. And I think that, again, operating in this sort of async fashion does help quite a bit because it gives you the opportunity to kind of not have to worry about everybody being in the office to be productive. It's just, everybody's at home doing their thing, and it gives you the ability to be a little bit more nimble, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Now, you were mentioning before the podcast that one of the leadership platforms you guys like is you have your own version of EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Operating System. I'm a big fan of that as well. Great books on how to build a system around your business. And most great entrepreneurs I've seen have kind of taken that and kind of evolve their own version of it. Tell me what you guys are doing with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really interesting. I was not familiar with EOS until Mission. One of the 3 companies we acquired headed into founding Mission was actually using EOS, and we kind of got interested in kind of keeping it going, just kind of say, hey, we're going to, need something here. We have our own experiences and our own leadership, but let's augment with some of the EOS things. And we've worked with a great coach who has helped us for the entire span of Mission with our planning cycles and keeping up to date with sort of the EOS practices. For those who aren't familiar, it is a sort of a collection of methodologies, sort of processes and artifacts that you kind of follow. So the types of things you do in a meeting, the agenda that you're going to use, the scorecards of things you're going to track as a business, how you plan quarterly and annually, all of this is sort of linked together intrinsically. And I think having that sort of fabric of connection that really binds together all of the different departments is super important because it forces you to look out over the horizon. This is where we are headed. What's our North Star, right? And, it's really critical that everybody's seeing the vision. And if they're all seeing the vision, odds are you're going to be running in the same direction. Whereas if you're
very well said and couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's easy to get distracted. We talk about those interrupts, right? If you're always looking directly in front of you, you may miss the mark.
As you've now a year in your acquisition with CDW, how much of kind of that original stuff do you think you'll be able to keep versus evolve into the CDW ecosystem and way of doing things?
Yeah, that's also a good question. And I think Because CDW is quite large and there's different aspects of the business that are totally different than ours, right? So one of the biggest parts of the business is a warehouse that ships out, laptops and Chromebooks and, all of that good stuff, right? It's this, so many people I have talked to are like, oh yeah, I'm a CDW customer. I'm really happy with them. And that's the engagement they originally had, was sort of infrastructure and sort of endpoints and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so, being a part of that is a very different way to plan when you're doing sort of these longer tail, like enterprise commerce is effectively what they're doing, sort of on the procurement side. There's a lot of work there that is very different in the cycles and the planning. So we have definitely embraced that fact and have continued to sort of run with our approach plus, right? Augmenting in and establishing ourselves as part of the broader business, making sure we're connected in how we plan and execute. And our founder and CEO, Simon Anderson, who I've worked with for many years, he's actually now over top of all of the cloud sort of practices at CDW. And so I think sort of bringing what we had to the party has allowed us to sort of up level and to sort of spread the good word about EOS. You know what I mean? And we're continuing to use it, evolve, but it's going to be different now that we're in a different context. But I think that it's set a really solid foundation for us.
Nice. All right. So the ultimate question, how do you keep engineering, product, and business aligned without endless meeting after meeting after meeting?
I think for me, the thing that's critical is that, it's easy to go into a situation and say, okay, I'm going to have my perspective on this and I'm going to do these things and look at what I'm going to build, right? And it's important that you go back and you're building the right things for the right parts of the business for your customers and so on. And like you said, getting aligned is really difficult, right? And so I think it's sort of this mixture of sort of trust and engagement, right? So constantly meeting with the rest of the leaders, not for hours and hours a day, but just staying in touch. Like what's up, what's going on in your part of the world, what are your objectives for the quarter, how can I help, right? And if we take that perspective for the internal side, and then on the flip side, we have to listen to our customers, right? And see where the market is headed to kind of set the roadmap. And for me, the part that I have sort of the most to offer is sort of engaging with customers in the market, really hearing what they have to say, understanding what they're struggling with. And so I can be a good advocate for them. And then we have the rest of the business advocating for themselves. And, melding those things together when you pattern match and you see these things that sort of align. I'll give you a good example. One of the things that we are working on now that we're rolling out in the first quarter is called collaboration loops. And in our mission control platform, it's effectively a way for customers, mission, AWS to all come together around a common rallying point and say, hey, we have this loop open. It's for a monthly optimization review. Here's the agenda items we're going to have coming into it. Here's supporting tickets and information, all pulled in, all automatic, so that when you land in the meeting, you're productive, right? You know exactly what you're trying to accomplish. At the end of the meeting, you close the loop and you archive and you can use that all to kind of save it for later. And you can see how things match out to your goals. And I think that's a great example of something that is both useful for us internally as service delivery, right? Our ProServe teams can be more effective because they're staying on the same page with customers. Our customers get what they need. They're always understanding where we are, where we're going. There's fewer disagreements about things like scope or drift, right? Or cost when everyone's always talking, right? You want it to be seamless, easy. And then obviously AWS loves that as well because they get to make sure that those projects they send our way are on track. And we can always consistently provide that feedback. So it's not all the way out there yet, right? This is a foundational thing. I'm really excited about it. It's also going to offer
Is this part of the mission control platform?
Yeah, it's part of mission control.
I like it.
And it'll be sort of like one of the core ways that AI impacts our future is through those collaboration loops. So pretty excited.
Now, before the show, you were mentioning how you guys have a Focus Friday policy. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So back, in the earlier days of Mission, this little thing happened called COVID. You may have heard of it. And, at the time, we actually had some offices and we had one in Boston and one in Los Angeles. And we had concentrations of people in those places. Well, we had to kind of obviously pivot like the rest of the world and kind of move out of the offices. And we ended up deciding just to shutter them and say, hey, look, let's take advantage of the opportunity. Let's adapt to the world. This is going to be a minute until things change back to the old way, if they ever do. And so we really shifted into that mode. And then what happens is you're now combating interrupts, right? Again, because it's easier to just close your office door when you're all in the same office and it's clear to someone that you're sending the signal of, I'm on not available right now, right? And as much as we like to set away messages on Slack, like people just message anyway, right? And so we were hearing pretty frequently like, hey, we got all these meetings, these video calls to align. It's really good. They're great. But like sometimes I need to focus and I'm not able to do so. And so as this leadership team, we went back and started to experiment some different things, ended up ultimately landing on Focus Fridays, which is we do not schedule meetings if we can avoid it. The exception is when a customer meeting has to happen, they set the agenda. That's fine. But in terms of internal meetings, we try to have none. We usually end up with some, but very few. So I think it's been very well received by the team. They appreciate being respected, that, they have stuff to do. And, folks like me and other leaders often find themselves in meetings too often. And we drag other people into it because we're not thinking about how they, what are their work patterns like. So Focus Friday has been a great addition to the business for sure.
As a remote company, building a culture is a lot harder than if you were in the office, and you do have to do unique things like that. At my company, Sonatafy, we have no video Fridays. So
nice.
Every Friday, otherwise on Zoom calls, everybody's using video. Once again, the exception is if you're on a client meeting, but for internal, we do no video Fridays as just a way to, try to ease the environment.
Yeah.
And, create a culture in the remote world, which is harder to do.
Yeah. That's insightful for sure. And one of the hacks for me is I even try to stop using the word remote, right? Like I prefer the word distributed because at Mission, like there's no remote from what, right? We're remote from each other, but no, we're distributed. We're a team and we're all over the place. And that creates challenges, that creates culture problems and so on, like you said. And you certainly have to be diligent about it. But I think like coming to it from that perspective has been very helpful for me to understand. It's like, oh, this isn't a world where there are people who are here and there are people who are not. It is just people. Right. And we're all over the place and we have to have a system to support that wherever somebody is in the world at any given moment in time. And I definitely think that has been a huge focus area for us. I've been really impressed with our people and culture team in terms of like them really caring about making sure we have proper sort of opportunities for people to connect on a human level. It makes a big difference.
Jonathan, what's the biggest scaling blocker you have right now and how are you tackling it?
I think the same as everybody, right? Like I have more to do than I have time to do, and I have more work necessary than capacity to execute, right? And I think the good news is we're in a period of time where there's a lot of focus on helping developers go faster, right? All of these different tools that are now out there and available. Our team uses everything from Cursor to, Kiro, which is AWS's sort of assistant. I'm a big Claude Code person. I've been doing kind of a lot with OpenClaw lately as well. And I would say that has been a huge boon for us. It's helped us be able to go fast in spite of, limitations in capacity that every organization ever will say, I don't have enough people, right? So, to me, it's been a nice way to goose it a little. But yeah, I'm excited about what we're doing and what we're building. And I think, continuing to invest there and to grow that as it becomes more and more important to our business is going to be important.
I like it. All right. So I can relate to this next one, but you're a software team inside of a service business, and that itself brings inherent challenges. Give your perspective on that.
Yeah. I think it's been one of probably the biggest challenge at Mission for me personally, right? This has been my first services business, at least in the type of services business that we're in. Before I've been mostly at product companies, developing software, had a long stint in an infrastructure provider, which is a services business, but in a very different way, more of a mass market thing. This isn't that. This is, professional services where you're, going where the customer takes you. That's really what's going on there. And I think that being a business that does EOS and plans and executes that way, we do a lot of things in a 1 year and then a quarter to quarter basis. That is a really challenging way to plan for a software team because these things have longer, more overarching sort of processes, right? The development cycle spans more than a quarter pretty frequently, right? We're doing this big feature, this new foundational thing. It's going to take us 2 quarters. It's going to take us 3 quarters, right? How do you kind of manage to that when the rest of the business is saying, I have to do exactly this one thing from point A to point B, this quarter, right? And they can be much more heads down executing, whereas we have to do a little bit more vision casting and sort of art of the possible. What I found that helps a lot there is attaching our vision to the company's vision, right? And saying, hey, look, let's talk about how these things align. You're running at things directly in front of you, but this goes back to what we talked about earlier about looking over the horizon, right? To the extent that we can say, you are trying to deliver excellent service to customers. We are trying to build things that will help our customers better receive the service that you are giving that's already excellent and to help you become more efficient, consistent. Then you start to get some traction. I think at CDW, it's been really exciting because mission control is pretty unique. And I sort of coined this term services as software, right? It's sort of like the flip side of software as a service. Enterprise kind of software, especially in cloud and AI, they're exceptionally complicated platforms. And
Yes.
the partner with a bunch of ISVs, the biggest, continuing message I hear from them is, churn is really, our biggest problem. And it's not because the product's not good. All the products are great these days. They're really, the products that win are the products that get adopted, right? They're great, but getting that adoption to actually happen is really challenging. And so mission control is purpose built to have the assumption of a service. It isn't you go off and buy this off the shelf thing and then use it as an MSP to kind of help you and it's sort of not built for it and so on. It's like, no, they're one and the same. The software and the service are equivalent and they depend on one another. And there's this assumption that it's there. And so I think, taking that philosophy into a services business, then you're basically going directly in and saying, we are aligned. We are building a service together. That is what we are doing. We are operating it together. We are building it with software. You're building it with, people and process. And if we support each other, we have a better product. It's all one product. It's not over here and that over there.
Jonathan, thank you for getting Uncensored with us today. Congrats on mission and the success you guys have had. As the founding CTO, you acquired 3 different companies. You grew it. You've now been acquired by CDW. As their premier partner for AWS managed services. I love it. Before we wrap, what's your no BS advice for other tech leaders out there who are trying to build, scale, or even just survive in these interesting times?
So what I would say is right now you probably have a lot of trepidation from certain parts of your business around AI. Is it going to take my job? Is it going to, I'm afraid of this or whatever it happens to be. And my advice is very much to help your people experiment, allow them some space and familiarity to kind of figure out, how is this going to change my life? How is this going to change my work? How can we, instead of coming down from on high and saying, now go do this, you're coming and saying, hey, you have the freedom to run. Here, go out and do some experimentation. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to be prescriptive. You know your job better than I do. We're here to support you. We're here for you to test and try. We're going to give you as much yes as we can so that you can, become, the best team that you can be. And so for me, the summary is basically, let your people do what they do best, right? They're creative. They're smart. If you give them the ability to do that, they're going to find the right ways to adopt technology. They're going to use it to make themselves more efficient and productive. They want it just as much as you do. So, give them the freedom.
Excellent advice. Thank you, Jonathan. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. If you like the show, go ahead and subscribe. Remember to fail hard, win big, and always build what matters. See you next time.
That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatafy Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.